There has been an awakening. Have you felt it? In the final panel of chapter 1043, Luffy's head is surrounded by some type of gooey material, suggesting his devil fruit power has finally awakened. So does this mean Luffy's devil fruit is the mysterious power which has suddenly struck fear in the hearts of the world's highest authority? And if so, what could the true name and nature of his power be? Those are certainly the questions everyone will be asking for the next few weeks, and the answer might surprise you. Don't worry, I won't keep you in suspense and keep you waiting until the end of the video for an answer. I'm going to tell you right up front that I believe the true name of Luffy's power is the Gum Gum Fruit. Sorry, was that anticlimactic?
One of the most significant bummers of my lifetime.
I don't want to mislead you into thinking you're going to find some complex numerology-based theory about a super secret divine repository of power now at Luffy's disposal, which will soon shake the very foundations of the One Piece world. This isn't that type of video. To be clear, I'm not fully discounting the possibility that Luffy's fruit is the mysterious power feared by the Five Elders, and we're going to consider what his fruit could be in the case that I'm wrong. But I am going to explain why ultimately I believe what we're seeing in chapter 1043 is simply the ordinary awakening of the very aptly named Gomu Gomu fruit. But first, let's back up for a moment. In the closing pages of chapter 1037, Oda cut between two scenes, the arrival of Zunesha in the waters surrounding Wano, and a conversation among the Five Elders in Marishwa concerning the awakening of a mysterious renamed devil fruit power after centuries of dormancy. It would certainly seem, based on the conclusion of chapter 1043, that Luffy's devil fruit is now awakening. But does this necessarily mean the Gomu Gomu fruit was the subject of the Elders' earlier conversation? Let's not be too quick to make assumptions and jump to any conclusions.
I say patience. Patience.
We dropped into the scene in chapter 1037 mid-conversation, as the Elders responded to an off-panel prompt. Whatever news they received suggested some mysterious power was suddenly awakening elsewhere in the world. The Mikhail Gorbachev Elder responded, "No, that's impossible. That fruit's a legend now even to us. It hasn't awakened in centuries." Blonde Elder then replied, "Then why would the world government bother to give that one specific devil fruit another name? It's to erase that fruit's name from the annals of history, isn't it?" At this point, we don't know what sparked the Elder's response in this scene. The paneling suggested Zunesha's arrival, reported by the government agent, prompted their alarm, but that's far less certain given recent developments. In truth, there's no direct link between these two scenes, and thus, we can't rule out the possibility Oda was intentionally misleading readers. However, we did learn that the mysterious devil fruit in question hasn't awakened for centuries, and that its true name was hidden by the world government. So the fruit we're looking to identify is presently known by a different name, showed evidence of awakening prior to chapter 1037, and once awakened, bestows upon its wielder a power which terrifies the world's highest authority, and apparently once awakened, the true name of this power could be revealed. When discussing this topic in earlier videos, I assumed Gorbachev's reference to the fruit being nothing more than a legend, even to the Elders, suggested its location has been unknown. But upon revisiting the scene, I think that's a lot less certain because there are multiple ways to interpret his use of the term legend. Does he mean the fruit itself, or simply its awakening? I think a better way to make sense of the dialogue in the scene is as follows. First, the Elders receive news which suggests this mysterious power is now awakening. Gorbachev Elder is immediately dismissive and says it's impossible. The fruit's awakening is nothing more than a legend, even to the Elders after centuries of dormancy. Blonde Elder then interjects to counter Gorbachev's dismissal. After all, if it were impossible, why would they have gone to the trouble of giving the fruit a different name? What this then indicates is that the location of the fruit could have been known to the Five Elders, which opens up a number of possibilities I previously dismissed, including the Gomu Gomu fruit and the mythical fish fruit. Oda is clearly using the intentional ambiguity of the dialogue and clever misdirection to keep us guessing. I outlined in an earlier video why I believe Tama's Kibi Kibi fruit could be the power which compelled Zunesha's arrival and binds it to Momo's command, but the events of the past couple chapters have indeed strongly indicated the Gomu Gomu fruit could be the mysterious devil fruit the government tried to hide from the annals of history. Naturally, many are assuming that Luffy's Gomu Gomu fruit is the topic of the Elders' conversation, and with good reason. In chapter 1018, Who's Who revealed the Gomu Gomu fruit was previously in the world government's possession, but was stolen by Shanks 13 years ago, and given Shanks' knowledge of world events, it would seem he may have stolen this fruit for a reason. The Elders issued an emergency order to CP0 to eliminate Luffy at all costs in order to prevent the worst case scenario. Then later, in chapter 1042, Kaido said Luffy's rubber fists shouldn't be able to alter trajectory mid-flight as they do when Luffy uses his Snake Man form, so Kaido's words could hint that Luffy isn't actually a rubber man. But what could his devil fruit in truth be that would fit all of the listed criteria? Luffy's powers, in their non-awakened state, clearly demonstrate the properties of rubber, so something completely unrelated seems out of the question. I've seen number-based theories which suggest Luffy could have some type of resin-based power, which I guess could technically make sense, but it's unclear why the world government would be so afraid of such an ability, or why its name would need to be classified, especially when compared to some of the other major powers in the world. Something like the Nika Nika or Smile Smile fruit could make thematic sense, especially given the artificial powers in use on Wano, perhaps referencing a smile stretching across a person's face, but it also doesn't really relate to Luffy's demonstrated power set or the gooey mess surrounding his head at the end of chapter 1043. Ultimately, I just can't help but feel there aren't many great options that satisfy all of the parameters established by the Elders conversation in chapter 1037. Like I said, I won't deny the possibility Luffy's fruit is the mystery power feared by the 5 Elders, and that its awakening will reveal that he wields some power which goes far beyond the ability to stretch like rubber. But I also think it's a little too obvious. Oda's being just a bit too heavy-handed in the foreshadowing. Who's words to Jinbei about the Gomu Gomu fruit previously being held aboard a government ship, the order from the Elders to execute Luffy immediately in order to prevent the worst case scenario, and now this hint from Kaido that Luffy's abilities are mislabeled. I think this is all an intentional misdirection on Oda's part. I won't argue that Luffy having such a mysterious and secret ability would make him overpowered or make him too special. The very first chapter made clear that the story of One Piece is Luffy's voyage of destiny. He's a bearer of the will of D, his treasured straw hat once belonged to the former Pirate King, and is apparently a hero's hat replica of a much larger version hidden away in Imu's vault. According to Yamato, his yet-to-be-revealed underlying dream was shared by Gold Roger. He was raised as a brother to Roger's son Ace, his grandfather is Garp, the hero of the Marines, his father is Dragon, the world's most dangerous criminal, he possesses 1 in a million Conqueror's Haki, and he hears the voice of all things. Not to mention, centuries-old prophecies have also foretold his eventual arrival and predict the impending impact of his ascendancy to the Pirate King's presently unoccupied throne. At this point, nearly everything about Luffy and his crew is special in some capacity, so I won't argue that the Gomu Gomu fruit being some rare treasure from the Void Century would be a bridge too far, or that it would make him too special. That's simply not the case. Luffy is already special. I also won't argue that it would make Luffy overpowered, because Oda has consistently demonstrated throughout the series he's capable of writing worthy adversaries for Luffy. Luffy needs to surpass all of the world's most powerful pirates to become the Pirate King, and as much as I believe we still have several hundred chapters remaining, it's undeniable the story's entering its final phase following Wano. Now would be the time, if any, to give Luffy such a dramatic power-up. So while I admit Luffy's fruit could be the newly awakened power which has captured the Elders' attention, renamed to be hidden from the pages of history, I still don't believe that to be the case, for 2 reasons. The first, when we take a step back, the pieces of the puzzle don't really fit. The Elders were somehow aware that this fruit had suddenly awakened after centuries of dormancy 6 chapters ago, which would be difficult to explain when it comes to Luffy. If we assume the pile of goo surrounding Luffy's head is representative of his awakening, the Elders would need to have been made aware of this fact before it happened, on the opposite side of the world no less. Yet we know the Elders rely on reports from field agents to receive intelligence about world events. Though Bowler Hat has now arrived on the roof, no one from CP0 was previously directly monitoring Luffy's battle with Kaido, so barring the Elders possessing some extrasensory ability to perceive the awakening of a devil fruit anywhere in the world, there's no one who would have been able to relay information to them suggesting Luffy's ability had suddenly awakened. Luffy has been on the world stage for quite a long time, and his abilities are well known. Nothing on panel has suggested any change in how Luffy is using his powers on Wano, which means as far as we've seen, there's no new on-panel evidence of Awakening that could have come as such a shock to the Five Elders. Further, from what we've seen, Awakening doesn't produce brand new, tangentially related abilities. The awakened paramethea powers used by Katakuri and Doflamingo extended beyond their hosts' bodies and altered or transformed the properties of their surrounding environment. Using Awakening, Kid was able to magnetize other objects and people, not just himself. In similar fashion, Law was able to attach his Sphere of Silence to Big Mom. In short, Awakening is an extension of a Devil Fruit's natural powers, not something completely unrelated. In that sense, it's easy to extrapolate that Luffy's abilities awakened would simply rubberize his surroundings. Awakening is not like Bankai and Bleach, or special Nen abilities in Hunter x Hunter, the explanations for which could hardly fit on modern Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Abilities in One Piece are largely uncomplicated. Law's Op-Op Fruit is at the very limit of how far Oda's willing to push the boundaries on a single Devil Fruit, and even then, it's easy to see a cohesive theme to his powers. Some abilities, like Sugar's and Doflamingo's, have a wide range of applications, while others, like Wapol's, are sufficiently bizarre, but the balance of Devil Fruit powers are usually clear and concise, and I believe that's because they represent a manifestation of people's dreams. Anything man can imagine, brought to life in reality. That last point is a topic for another day, but I'll close this part of the discussion by reminding you of a question from the Volume 65 SBS. A reader asks why, in this world full of strong ability users, Oda chose to give Luffy a simple, and by comparison, seemingly weak ability to stretch like rubber. They ask how Luffy can compete with such superpowered antagonists using his relatively simple abilities. Oda's response is telling, as he says he intentionally chose to impart Luffy with the goofiest power he could imagine, because he wasn't interested in drawing a straightforward, cool, tough hero, especially for so many chapters. Indeed, even Zoro, the most stereotypically badass member of the crew, fights using the ridiculous technique of carrying a sword in his mouth. Oda says that no matter how serious and dark the story gets, Luffy's still stretching and inflating, which allows him to lighten the mood as needed. In short, Luffy's goofy Gomu Gomu powers aren't just a power set, they're integral to the very tone of the series, and I don't imagine that's something Oda's willing to change, particularly after so many years. Luffy has always been creative in how he uses his powers, and never has the Gomu Gomu fruit felt like a hindrance or a limitation. He stretches his abilities to their limit, and when and if Luffy does awaken, rubberizing his surroundings will likely grant him new techniques which are badass and goofy in equal measure, consistent with the tone Oda has established throughout the entire series. Okay, so then how do I explain the pile of goo surrounding Luffy's head at the end of chapter 1043? Well, I won't deny that it likely represents Luffy's awakened Devil Fruit powers, but for the reasons stated, I think the timing is merely coincidental, that Luffy wasn't the subject of the Elder's concern. In fact, natural rubber is harvested from trees as a liquid, and so I see no reason to believe that Luffy melting means his powers aren't of the Gum Gum variety. If anything, it would seem his awakened abilities will take full advantage of the wide range of material properties exhibited by natural rubber. Interestingly, a reader once asked Oda in a Volume 8 SBS question whether Luffy was natural or synthetic rubber, and Oda's response is that Luffy is naturally stupid rubber. While I don't believe this is in any way foreshadowing, it does suggest Luffy's awakening is perfectly in line with his established Devil Fruit powers. Simply put, awakened or otherwise, Luffy's power is the Gum Gum Fruit. Importantly, if my speculation is correct, the question of the mystery renamed Devil Fruit remains unanswered. While I earlier asserted Tama's Kibi Kibi Fruit could be a good fit, it's worth mentioning her power hasn't been referred to by name on panel, so a change in nomenclature wouldn't make for the most dramatic of revelations. There's no doubt that revealing Luffy's fruit as a legend lost to the mists of time would have major ramifications, but his isn't the only Devil Fruit to have received quite a bit of focus during the Wano story arc. I believe Oda is intentionally leading readers to believe Luffy's awakening is the mysterious power the Elders were discussing in order to take our attention off of Kaido. After all, if Luffy can awaken, then why not the story arc's central antagonist? That's the problem of power escalation.
What about escalation?
Escalation.
If we start carrying semi-automatics, they buy automatics.
If Luffy can awaken, then so too can Kaido. We already know the world government has a particular interest in Kaido's mythical fish fruit, as Vegapunk went to great lengths to create an artificial duplicate. Big Mom revealed she gave the power to Kaido on the day rocks collapsed, indicating it has a direct connection to the Celestial Dragons and God Valley, and the particular dragon form its wielder takes may have significance to the broader One Piece world. The elders ordered CP0 to immediately eliminate Straw Hat Luffy in order to prevent the worst case scenario, built on rumor and hearsay. Naturally, readers assumed this meant the elders were afraid of Luffy, but perhaps they were afraid Luffy would push Kaido too far, causing him to awaken the mythical fish fruit for the first time in centuries. After all, in chapter 1007, Agent Bowler Hat honestly suggested it was for the best Vegapunk's efforts to make a duplicate supposedly failed. But what could the awakened fish fruit really be, and why was it renamed? Interestingly, ancient dinosaur fruit already used the name Ryu Ryu, or Dragon Fruit, so that option doesn't seem to be on the table. But perhaps it's the model Siryu or Azure Dragon label, which is incorrect or misleading. I won't spend too much time on Kaido's potential powers in this video, as I'm already working on an entire 9-hour video series on that topic, the first part of which has already been released, but I will note the frequency with which we see the mythic dragon represented around the world. The statue which once adorned the gates of Onigashima bears a striking resemblance to Momo and is missing Kaido's extra set of horns, indicating it was not commissioned to honor Wano's current ruler, or in other words, the statue predates Kaido. We see the same statue in the women's bath on Alabasta, and perhaps most importantly, atop the castle in Ryugu Kingdom. As I will detail in coming videos, I believe the particular dragon form assumed by the wielder of the mythic fish fruit is representative of Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea from Japanese mythology, and as such, wonder if this could explain in part why Kaido's fruit is so important to the entire One Piece world. But we must still ask what news from Onigashima could have suggested that Kaido's fruit is now awakening. Perhaps it's not Kaido alone, but the twin dragons, Kaido and Momo, which indicate this power has awakened. It would seem the spiral pattern on the surface of Devil Fruit is significant, and notably, based on the design revealed in One Piece Magazine 13, Kaido's fruit is unique, in that it has not one, but two spiral stems, perhaps suggesting it contains not one, but two souls, now both manifest in the world through Kaido and Momonosuke. Just from a writing standpoint, I think it makes more sense to emphasize the strength of the antagonist, the obstacle Luffy must overcome, rather than the protagonist, in order to elevate the stakes as much as possible before the true final battle begins. Luffy is awakening, and Oda is leading readers to believe this will make him so powerful, even the elders are trembling in fear. Only to subvert this expectation when powered up Luffy pushes Kaido to his breaking point and draws out the awakened power of the mythic dragon fruit, leading to the true climactic battle of the Wano story arc, in which Luffy, with the power of the 9 shadows from Toki's prophecy, will at last deliver the new dawn. So that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. There are certainly no clear answers at this point to the question of the mystery devil fruit, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Luffy's awakening was the subject of the elders' conversation? And if so, what do you think could be the true identity of the Gomu fruit? If not, what power do you think they were discussing? If you like this video, please leave a like. If you want to be notified when future videos are posted, please consider subscribing, and remember to hit the bell icon to turn on notifications. It really helps the channel grow, and I really appreciate your support. But most important, make sure you let me know your thoughts down in the comments.